Welcome to The Ride with Chevy and Nasty. Host Randy Chevrier and Sheldon Napastia guide you through great stories that spark great conversations. Two really big guys talking a big game. The boys are locked in and ready to go. Welcome to The Ride.
Yes, and welcome to The Ride, and thank you all for joining us on this fine Tuesday night, as we always do at 10:30 Mountain Standard Time. Chevy and I get together to talk a little smack, look back on our week, and a little look at the week ahead. Chevy, how are you doing?
We are ready. We're ready, Cozy. We are ready for you, and we're ready for the show. I'm feeling good. It was one of those migraine days, like all day I was feeling kind of grimy, kind of just draggy, and I was like, what is going on? And I didn't sleep much last night, but then I went to football practice tonight, and I could see that it was that nasty sky, like beautiful sky. If you're a photographer like you are, you love the sky, but for people like me that suffer from migraines, it's a killer. So if I'm slurring my words tonight, it's because I'm kind of climbing out of it. I'm trying to get some food in me and some fluids, but I'm here, I'm happy, and I'm excited. I'm excited to be back on the show today.
Well, good to have you. And I heard a little bit of that slur earlier. Sometimes you forget the people that are impacted by the pressure change. It's a real deal, right?
Oh, man.
Yeah. But anyway, Chevy, you made it, and we made it to episode 68. Who would have guessed? So Trey, who do we got tonight for number 68? Maybe some famous players, some teammates. Oh, there we go. Yep.
I like those guys.
Jaguar is looking good with that flow, man. Wow, that is a vintage shot right there.
Yeah, well, a couple of weeks ago we had Mario Lemieux, and we talked about how great he was, and we said he's definitely the number 2 of all time to Wayne Gretzky. Even though I think this week in our chat, I put in a little podcast thing where Wayne said if Mario was healthy and didn't miss all that time with disease and some injury, Wayne thinks that Mario would have outpaced him. But I think, in my mind, the definite number 3 of all time has got to be Jaromir Jagr. I don't know, like, where does Jaromir sit with you? Because he's one of those guys that played for so long. He's played for so many NHL teams. He was so great in his prime and even beyond his prime. But at this point, it's kind of like the Aaron Rodgers in the NFL, the Brett Favre. Do you remember him for how great he was when he was playing with Mario and the Pittsburgh Penguins? Or do you remember him for like the cups of coffee he had like in Calgary and all his many stops along the way at the traveling Jagers?
Yeah, because he took some time off of the NHL for sure. But, for me, he's absolutely up there with one of the greats. You remember him from his prime. But it's almost the way that he came back just to play that added to the legend. The traveling Jagers, in fact, just builds to that legend. I'm not the kind of guy to go do that, but I've always thought, wouldn't that be awesome just to go on the road and throw on your mullet and just rock it out, because they had a real good thing going there for a number of years, and I don't know if they still make appearances anywhere, but that was awesome. Like, it's one thing to look up in the stands and see somebody wearing your jersey, your number. It's another thing to see somebody rocking your mullet. I mean, that's the coolest thing.
Yeah, no, an interesting thing. I always love this fact. I'm sure everyone knows. Maybe, I don't know if Trey would know this because he wasn't watching hockey when Jaromir was in his prime. But everyone used to say, and it's true, that Jaromir Jagr, it's scrambled up. It spells Mario Jr., right? And that was the big deal back in Pittsburgh. And he sure was dynamic. You know what else he's known for? He was known for being. I guess there was an attempted blackmail on him. You remember this? He had slept with this 18-year-old girl a woman, and she took some pictures of him and tried to blackmail him, and she said, if you don't pay me X number of dollars, I'm gonna go to the media with this. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And he's like, do it. He's like, I'm not married. I got no kid. I don't care. And it made him look like the ultimate stud. He's super badass move on Jaromir Jagr's part. But let's move on. We got some other guys here in the middle there, front and center. Who you got there, Sheldon?
Big chill, Freddie Childress. Now, dude, you remember this guy? Did you ever play against him?
I did play against
360 pounds, just a massive man.
When he was in Saskatchewan at the end of his career, that's when I got to play against him.
Yeah, for me, I remember the first time, like he was always a legend when I first got into the league, and he was a tough guy to go against, right? Not the fleetest of foot, but super strong, super smart. But I always remember him for that time. He was when he was with the Stampeders, I was with the Riders, and it was when we just started. Like we'd already had September 11th, and the league around the same time just put in the overtime rule, and we played Calgary to a 52-52 quadruple overtime tie. When they basically just called it. They shortened it after that because it added like an hour or so to the game. On the way home, we're all dehydrated. I'm staying in Regina. They're getting on the plane to go back the next day. He's maybe a little hungover, a little dehydrated. And I don't know if you remember this, but Regina, out of all the cities in Canada, had the toughest security. I mean, it's all a bunch of farmers in riders jerseys flying in and out of the Regina airport. But for whatever reason, they would hold you up for like 10 minutes a person, going through every pocket in your jeans and your bags, tightest security. And he made the comment, well, it's not like I got a bomb in there or anything.
Oh, that's
and
it.
For saying it's not like I have a bomb or something, they pulled him off the flight. They held him back in the airport for hours with an interrogation and wouldn't let him fly home to Calgary. I don't know. Did you ever hear that story?
I had actually never heard that story, but I just heard that he's quite the character, amazing player. He was part of those great Stampeder teams with, if I'm not mistaken, he played with Doug Flutie and Jeff Garcia, if I'm not mistaken, even Dave Dickinson in his prime. I mean, he saw all the great quarterbacks, and he probably helped make some of the great quarterbacks. But I never heard that story. I mean, that's
well, like Chris Walby once said, he's a $20 cab ride just to get around. Like he was a large man and he knew how to position his body. So he was good. I got to play against him, and I think the last time I'd seen him, he was at the Denny's on 16th Avenue here in Calgary. I'm not sure if he makes Calgary's home, but the last guy to the right, as I look at the screen, is old. Well, not old. Well, he is. He had a birthday yesterday, and that's big Rob Lazio. Another one of my great roommates. I mean, Sheldon Napaschuk, great Saskatchewan boy, was one of the people I got the honor to room with, and there was many great adventures and comedic times. And then Rob Lazio is the other one. Played with him through his career, and great guy, great center. Started his career, I believe it was it Winnipeg? Started in Winnipeg and then went to Saskatchewan, I believe. Big, huge guy, like huge. He looked like RoboCop in pads. And, he was always that sixth offensive lineman, sometimes seventh, right? Saskatchewan, he was always the sixth guy. Never got the start until he got traded to Calgary and he became our center. And we talked about him a couple of weeks ago when we were talking, or last week when we talked about Crysdale? Jamie Crysdale, small, not huge, but athletic, fast center, that type of prototype CFL center that's pretty quick. Rob Lazio was the opposite. He was a tackle body playing center, big, huge dude. And he excelled at that center spot, didn't he? Like his thing was he's super big, super strong. Don't let him get his hands on you. You don't want to get in a pushing match with him. But you could move and get around him. When he moved to center, he was such a natural at that position. He played so well with his guards, that strong punch.
Well, he was so nasty. Don't you remember last year? For those of you that are listening and are newer to our show, a couple years back, we did an interview with Doug Brown. You can look it up at Chevy and Nasty. It's on YouTube. And Doug was talking about Lazio, just how nasty it was to go against him on field goal. You remember, like he's like, why are we doing this? And Laz was just a nasty, mean son of a gun. In fact, before we were roommates and teammates, we got into a scrap in a preseason game. So I believe I'm going to say it was 2007. 2007, because it would have been 2007. I'm pretty sure that was the year after you left, right? 2006 or 7. Anyhow, we go to preseason, we go to Saskatchewan, and I'm playing D-line, so it would have been 2007. And we're playing, and we're going at it back and forth. And next thing you know, we get into a big scrap. Like it was one of those
preseason game.
Yeah, in a preseason game, at the end of the game, him and I are scrapping. Everyone's scrapping. It's just, bad blood. Saskatchewan, Calgary, you just can't beat that rivalry, even in preseason. Anyhow, we go back home, and I'm pissed, and they write an article about what happened, blah blah blah. You talk about it. The very next day is the day we traded Wes Cates, who went on to a stellar career with the Riders. Yes. We trade Wes Cates for Rob Lazio. And the very next day, him and I are teammates. And now there's this newspaper article of him and I head to head, button heads, kind of like the face off in the when they square up for the mixed martial arts fights. And it was kind of weird. It was super weird, like to just, you were in a fight with a guy.
But then you were roommates.
Yeah. Yeah. We became good buddies. We were roommates for a number of years, and we had some laughs, man. I was trying to get him on the show tonight because I texted him yesterday and in today because it was his birthday, and I didn't realize it was the Rob Lazio episode. So I'm like, Rob, you got to come on. You got to tell the whipped cream story. So I'm gonna tell him one day we'll get Rob Lazio on and tell the whipped cream at the Grey Cup story, because I can't do it justice if I tell the story about myself. I want to get his perspective.
Okay. Because I don't know the full story. Like I've heard bits and pieces of it again, but you're not going to tell it tonight.
No, we won't tell tonight. You know what? We're gonna keep it in the CFL. We're gonna keep it in the CFL. But guys, before we continue on talking and stuff, we're gonna get to some 300-pound poetry. I like the way you flagged it. I was gonna get there. I was just kind of setting it up. So Trey, let's hit the splitter.
And now, 300-pound poetry with Chevy and Nasty.
No, not the Canadian election, but the ride with Chevy and Nasty, the podcast with absolutely no direction.
But if you vote for the libs, they'll call you a snowflake and woke. If you vote for the cons, they'll say you're just a racist white folk.
There won't be a winner because everyone is just choosing sides, belittling those who don't agree with them, and only seeking to divide.
But at least we have sports to keep us united, unless you're a league with no stars. Ed Hervey's comments got the players feeling slighted.
They sure do. Tonight we celebrate Canada and the things that make us great, because we don't need no U.S. handouts, and we're not the 51st state.
With spring having sprung, we continue to rhyme. We are your 300-pound poets, and we are just barely on time. But we are on time, Chev. We are on time.
I think we were on time. Jamin liked that last line about not being the 51st state. We have some good American friends, right? We got Chris Rubio, and I feel bad if Rubio, if you're on tonight, and he's probably not on. Maybe I should text him. I don't get to listen to his show as much as I'd like to, because Michelle, I'm always running. At work, I can't listen to the shows. And then when I'm driving home, I just don't have enough time. Usually I'm making my phone calls to my girlfriend or my kids or whatever. And then I rush to football practice. I barely get the show prep in on time. And I think I got in, 15 minutes before we were going to air tonight. So Rubio,
the last thing I said to you in your car is I'll see you in 6 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So Rubio, if you're listening, I love your show. I listen to it when I drive to Red Deer, which happens once every couple of weeks, and I listen as much as I can. But if you guys have some time, you got to listen to the Rubio Method. It's a great show. It gives a really neat perspective from our friends down south. I would say, and I don't think he would be opposed. Rubio is a right leaning kind of guy, and he's got some right leaning kind of ways. So I think it's great to get that perspective, especially up here up north. We have ideas about what it is down there, but he's a guy that lives down there, and give him a listen. He's a good guy. He's got a big heart too. Big heart. And also our friend AC Sports, he comes on once in a while, so give them some shout outs. But back in the CFL, we mentioned in our poem, Sheldon, where do you want to go first? It was Combine weekend. Let's start with that, the good stuff. It was Combine weekend in the CFL.
You know what I'll take from the CFL Combine.
Yeah,
is and there are some complaints and criticisms that they didn't have it open to season ticket holders or something like that, and the CFL is doing his usual horrible job at promoting it. But I'll tell you what, Chev, what I've been seeing on my social media feeds is a bunch of reels and clips and stories coming up from watching these young guys going out there and competing, seeing some guys in the sprints, the different drills. And it kind of took me back to the fact that I never went to the combines. I had my torn pec that year, and I was at Iowa State. I wasn't going to fly back to, I think it was in Toronto or something that year, just for a combine where I'd have to watch. But you went through that whole process. How much pressure is there on these guys? Is it considered a big thing for these guys? Like, can you really stand out from the combines over your gameplay?
You know what? I'm going to say back then, I think there was a huge benefit to it because there was not the technology that we have now. Think about where we are now to 23 years ago, right? When I was in the combine, we had video cassettes. It's hard to see anything from video cassettes. There was no high quality HD to see a guy, to watch how he plays. People want to see guys in person. But the value is still there for players to come and see what a guy looks like, to see, how he moves, how his hips open, how they, you could tell a lot from seeing guys in person. Back in the day, it was a big deal because they didn't invite as many guys as they do. They didn't have regional combines that you're allowed to go to that can kind of filter into the national combine. They didn't have the ability, like we didn't have the ability to go to US pro days. There's a lot of Canadian kids that maybe it's through their agents. I'm not sure exactly how they do. They get invited to U.S. college pro days where NFL scouts are going to be. There was only one U.S. college game that 2 Canadians went to every year, and that was the East-West Shrine game. So the combines were a big deal. Now there's more opportunities, like the quarterback from, I believe was it Wilfrid Laurier this year? He went to play in one of the Senior Bowls. Canadians are getting more opportunities, but I do believe that the combine is a big deal for these kids to show what they can do. Is it necessarily go ahead?
Well, I was just going to say, I like the fact that I'm actually able to see it, though. It used to be they have the combines, they'd have a camera set up to watch the one-on-ones or routes, but you couldn't really see much. I like the fact that they've got camera crews there. I like watching these young Canadian kids, seeing who can move. Like Trey was showing us earlier, there's some guys like running some pretty amazing times. 40-yard dash 4.51. I haven't run that since my sophomore year. How about you, Chev?
I've never run a 4.51. The fastest I ran,
I think I hit a 4.86 once when I was in my skinnier days. But
I was a 4.75. That was my combine run. But yeah, to see these guys, and then we got
mine was laser. Yours was handheld.
Yeah, maybe, but probably not.
A laser 4.86 is a handheld 4.7.
Yeah, there you go. But but the combine was I remember it was a big deal for me. It was in Montreal. It was at the Olympic Stadium, so I was home for it. I'll tell you, I made some great friends there that I still speak to this day. Like when I went to the combine, it's a collection of the best of the best, and that's another thing too, right? Like, when I was at McGill, by the time I was in my 4th or 5th year, I was the big man on campus, and there was a couple of guys that trained as hard as me, but when you go to something like the combine or one of those college all-star games, it ramps you up a level. It puts you in that echelon. It's like, okay, there's some elite guys here, some guys that have that same hunger, that same passion, that get your obsessiveness with weight training or long snapping or whatever it is you do. And you start to feel like, oh, I'm not alone. Because sometimes, when you go to McGill University or some of those universities, especially back in the day where chances of making it weren't huge and you're just obsessive and everyone's like, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. And then you get into a room where everybody has that single-mindedness. It's very inspiring. So I bet for a lot of these guys, they make some good friends. Like I made a couple of good friends at the combine. One namely Angus Reid, who played forever as a center. Like
he was your year.
Yeah, he was my year. So I met Angus there. I think Kevin Iben was my year. But yeah, there was some great guys that I met there. It was a great experience. It was good for players to meet the coaches. I met Adam Rita there, Greg Marshall, Tom Higgins there, the late great Don Montreal coach Don Matthews. So it was great for me to kind of get out of where I was and to see what the next level looks like. And yeah, I'm pretty excited. There was a kid from McGill there this year, really good kid, Domenico Piazza. He's got his hopes. So, these guys are hoping to become future stars. And this is a step. I mean, you still got to play the game, but this is a step to that future that they hope for.
So let me ask you about that next, because Ed Hervey last week comes out with this comment, because I love that you called them stars. Ed Hervey comes out during negotiations. I don't know any superstar players in the CFL. If you guys feel they're a super if you feel they're superstar, fantastic. I'm not into those guys' personal feelings about themselves. That's not where I go. He just basically flat out laid. And who were they in the negotiation with again?
It was Lewis.
Eugene Lewis.
Eugene Lewis, right?
And comes out and he says, hey, if you don't take care of your superstars, you're going to lose them. And Ed Hervey says there are no superstars. Is that a GM tactic, or is that where you're just trying to value the guy and say, listen, we're not going to pay you that much money? Or is he stating a fact that, listen, nobody's bigger than the team in the league?
Yeah, I could go two ways on this. First of all, I'll start with the athlete. We talk about these young athletes coming up. They're different. It's great for them. The game is different than when we played. The athletes are different. The coaches are different. And sometimes old school and new school doesn't mix. That's what I think. Sometimes old school and new school doesn't mix. And you got a player that got his feelings hurt, and he's going on social media complaining about the GM's comments. And I don't know if Ed Hervey's comments were public or not. I guess they came out. But he probably made that comment after whatever he said to Lewis. But like, players, you got to grow a thicker skin, man. And going to the media because you got hurt feelings, just go on the field and play. Like, when you have to, you know how it is. When someone has to go out and tell people how great they are,
yes,
maybe they're not that great. Now, this guy's a great player, but when you're
probably one of the best right now. But Ed Hervey was a superstar. And I'm just wondering, is it like, coming from a former superstar, are you humbling the guy? Is he looking back? Is that a message to his younger self to be even more humble?
But hold on. You're saying Ed Hervey was a superstar. Now I'm going to go to the other side. I don't think Ed Hervey was a superstar, nor do I think Eugene Lewis is a superstar. When I think of a superstar, I love the CFL. Like, don't get me wrong. And I love that these athletes are coming up through the combines. I love the players that I watch. I love the players that I played with. I played with some great CFL football players. I played with some great players. I played with some guys in the Hall of Fame. But did I play with many superstars? I don't know, because when I think and again,
define a superstar, because there are guys that are absolutely excelling year after year, and they're coveted by every team.
Yeah, they're coveted by every team in the CFL. They're covered by every team in the 9-team CFL. I'm not trying to diminish the league, but let's be real about what it is. It's not a league of superstars. I'll say there's some stars within the league, but for me, when I think of a superstar, I think of a generational athlete that has generational recognition and has at least one endorsement for something on a national scale. We don't have one CFL athlete that they have a CFL Purelator Tackle Hunger initiative, and the face of that is the announcers on TSN. It's not even the athletes. So for me, when that's being said, sorry, Sheldon, when that's being said, it's like, maybe Ed Hervey is right about that in a sense. Is it good for the league for him to say that publicly? Probably not. But is he wrong? No. And he's a GM.
It's funny because I was going to say, there's still guys buying jerseys. There's still guys going to training camp wanting an autograph. But looking at the CFL right now, when you talk, I think that generational player is a good example where guys are talking about him 10, 20 years later, like Doug Flutie, obviously, Jeff Garcia. Could you fit Henry Burris into the superstar status? I mean, he was having a star.
He was a star.
I don't want to use, you have to make it the NFL to be a superstar. I think it's got to be where people are buying your jersey and coming into the city just to see you.
But look at Doug Flutie. For as much as a superstar he was in the CFL, and he was in the CFL at a really good time. We're going to talk about this gentleman later, but John Candy, who had bought into the Argonauts, they brought Rocket Ishmael. Rocket Ishmael was a superstar because he was a highly coveted NFL guy, and he chose to come to CFL, right? And that was a superstar move. You talk about when Ricky Williams came to the CFL. For as much as he floundered as a player, he was a superstar playing in the CFL. He had more name recognition than any of the stars in the CFL at that time. Think about the entire Toronto Argonauts roster of that time when Ricky Williams played, and the only guy you could name is Ricky Williams.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a superstar. CFL doesn't have those guys. For the fans, we have the Bo Levi Mitchells. We have the Andy Fantuzes. But you know who could be the next superstar? Like even John Cornish, who at the height of his thing, he's the chancellor of the university. He's very highly prominent in the Calgary community, U.S. college Canadian athlete of the football player of the year trophy named after him, blah, 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 blah. He's not a superstar. He was a star.
Yeah.
But
I hear what you're saying, Chev, but I think there's got to be some level of relativity, right? Like in terms of if you're a star in Canada and everybody, I think you can achieve Canadian superstar status. But that
you know what?
It sounds like a cop out. Like maybe it is. Like, but what about a guy in the NBA? That's the biggest thing in North America. But somewhere, I can't say Latvia because they love it there. Maybe somewhere in South America they don't follow the NBA that closely. I think you're still relative to the market you're in to some extent, right?
No, but listen, you talk about generational. When I think of a superstar, LeBron James doesn't have to say.
You see this, but Todd Kozak's saying that the only true superstars left in the CFL are Chevy and Nasty.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, maybe. But you
I saw a guy 5 years ago was still wearing my jersey at a game. That felt kind of good.
But you talk about, LeBron James doesn't have to say, "Hey, look at me, I'm a superstar." Lewis Hamilton in the Formula One doesn't have to say, "Hey, look at me, I'm a superstar." Tiger Woods doesn't have to play another round of golf to be a superstar. Neither is Wayne Gretzky, nor Jaromir Jagr. Like, you know what a superstar is. Now, do we have some big fish in a little pond? Yeah, probably. Is Eugene Lewis a big fish in a little pond? Yeah, probably. But you know what Ed Hervey's job is? To replace him. That's his job, plain and simple. And he's not the first GM to say, "Hey, you know what? You hurt your elbow this year, Sheldon. You're not worth as much as you were last year." Any way to save money on that $4.5 million cap, they will. And if it's going to hurt a guy's feelings and say, "Hey, you're not really worth what we're paying you, and we could find another guy just like you," well, then that's what he feels. And to be truthful, until the CFL's draft, or selection process is the guys that don't make the NFL, the next round of cuts, then maybe you could say that. But right now there's this gap. There's the guys that go to NFL camps and get cut. And then there's the guys in that window that never go to the CFL, never go back to the NFL, but are just waiting. And then there's guys that show up in the CFL. There are guys that go to a $100 workout to get a t-shirt in a dirt field in the middle of Nebraska. And all of a sudden, this guy can catch some footballs or cover a receiver. Then he gets invited to another free agent camp, and he's on the team. It's not always a guy that's known. It's not the guy that wasn't one of the 250 guys drafted in the NFL. It's the next 300-400 down that list, and maybe some guys in between. That's what it is. So when you got your star running backs in the CFL, I remember when Joffrey Reynolds was rushing for 1,000 yards every year, Sheldon. And then our owner comes in and says, "Oh, we got this guy that's from Oregon that's going to beat him out," for no reason other than he was a guy from Oregon, and you're going to try and get rid of a 1,000-yard running back just for the fact that the guy that you happen to sign comes from Oregon and no other performance metric. That's when you know that there are no superstars.
I'm going to say, I think it's when your kids know them or if your kids don't know them. Because when I was a kid, I had jerseys and stuff from the guys I loved. They were, to me, superstars. Right now, I'm not sure we have that. Chef, great take, but we went way late. So right now, we go to break. Well, we came in on time. Wait. The poem said we were on time. Are we on time? Definitely not. Yeah, definitely not. But guys, we're going to take a quick break. Here's a good chance for you guys to grab a snack, grab a drink, and share and smash. On YouTube, you got that little button that throws hearts up on the screen. That always gets me excited when I see that. Guys, just do your part to help grow this little podcast we call The Ride with Chevy and Nasty. We really appreciate you guys being here, and we'll see you here just on the other side.
Performance Freight Management is a global logistic freight shipping company that will handle the entire shipping process for any package to any country. Whether it be a simple truck shipment from your office to Toronto or your company importing generators from China, PFM Freight handles it all. We have the expertise and technology to handle any shipping requirements. Skip the guesswork and let us take the shipping pain off your plate.
Do you want your business to be known? YYCCalgaryBusiness.ca is Calgary's only online media platform that gets you noticed. Short-form video content is rapidly taking over as the most effective way to engage your audience. Whether you're being interviewed on a vodcast, sharing a sizzle reel, or even hosting your own show, there is one place you can publicize your business. We want to tell your story and introduce you to our network of empowered business owners and leaders right here in Calgary. Isn't it time you took your digital game to 11? Call us or email us now.
Well, Trey is giving us a gold star for the first segment, even though we were a little late. We knew it was going to go late. We said we'd take a little bit more time. There's some good stories about former teammates and opponents, good stories about the CFL. And you know what? It's nice to talk some sports once in a while. We've been heavily leaning into politics ever since the new year. And to get back to, when there's an event like the Combine or a big story like a GM talking about, no stars in the league, it's fun to talk about that. We're the ride with Chevy and Nasty, Performance Freight Management, We Drone Real Estate Media, and YYC Business sponsor us. And guys, we're so glad that you're here. We see a lot of comments. I like when I see names of former players or former great stars of the CFL. I saw Milt Stegall, I saw Charlie Roberts, Alan Pitts, some great guys.
Warren Moon, a throwback to when we were just kids.
Now, Sheldon, who was may not have been a superstar, but who was the greatest athlete that you played with or against in the CFL? Who is the guy that when you watch him, you're like, well, this guy could have been it either here or there, or who is that guy? Is there a guy that impressed you that much?
Looking back at some of the guys, like Joffrey Reynolds was amazing. The receiving core with the young Nick Lewis, Kenyon Rambo. But Joffrey Reynolds was always, and Nick Lewis were probably two of the biggest stars that I'd ever played with, where I just watched them. I got excited to see them on the field. For me, the other guys, being a defensive lineman, it was always came down to quarterbacks, and there weren't any good quarterbacks. I sacked them all. Damon Allen was hard to get. But Ricky Williams really impressed me because I played against him in college as well. Yeah. And to me, the way that he played, even though it didn't translate great to the Canadian game, but he was a real star. And then for mine, and we've talked about him before, I was a fanboy while I was playing of Jesse Lumsden. Because 6'4", 6'3" running back that ran as like a thoroughbred horse. He just run through you if you gave him the chance. So there was a few of those guys. Back to when I was a kid, though, my favorite player of all time was Bobby Jerson. Okay. I don't know if you guys even knew about him in Montreal, but he was number 71, wore that Rising Star bandana. You don't remember him?
I don't, because in Montreal when I was growing up, we didn't have a team. So I didn't follow the CFL. We had no team in the 80s. So it missed my, my crucial years from, I would have been anywhere from 4 to 12 years old in the 80s. And the Alouettes came back in the 90s. Yeah, I missed the whole, a good portion of the CFL. For me, you hit the nail on the head with one of the names. For me, I think the most exciting, dynamic player, athlete, even selfless, even though a lot of people thought he came across as selfish, was Nick Lewis. For sure. Probably in the CFL, one of the greats, one of the smartest players. He was that guy that always coached up the young guys. He played for a long time. He's one of the top receivers. If I'm not mistaken, he broke Milt Stegall's records. I don't know. Trey's going to get me in errors and omissions, but Nick Lewis, one of the greatest receivers in the CFL. I have to say, Doug Flutie. You know me, I love the underdog, the whole Doug Flutie story, and then I got to play him when I was in Dallas, and he was in San Diego.
You guys overlapped.
Yeah, so I
Holy
got
crap, he was old then.
I totally fanboyed on him on the field after the game. Hey, I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, Mr. Flutie, I'm so excited to meet you!" And I was playing. And then, cool. Fast forward to the 100th Grey Cup in 2012. After we lost the game, I happened to share an elevator ride and a walk all the way back to the hotel with Doug. And we were just chatting and stuff. And that was a pretty cool moment. The other guy was Brandon Browner. Remember Brandon Browner?
Oh, yeah.
DB.
Yeah, I never played with him. He came in right after me. Yeah.
So he came in from the NFL, had a huge chip on his shoulder. Canada mellowed him out a little bit, and I knew Trey was going to like this. Brandon Browner went to the Seahawks. I believe he won a Super Bowl with them, and then he also went to the Patriots, and he was the reason that Malcolm Butler got the interception that lost the Seahawks the Super Bowl a few years later. And that was because Brandon Browner beat the crap out of the receiver, and Russell Wilson had to throw it short, and freaking Malcolm Butler coming up with that unlikely interception.
He was crazy. Like, he was like 6'4" playing cornerback. It looked like his knee backwards like an ostrich. First time I saw him, I thought, well, I guess he's a misfit. That's why he's up here. Then you watched him play. Dude was competitive.
He was a hitter.
And super athletic with that 6'4" frame.
Do you remember there was the Labor Day game against the Eskimos at the time, and Andrew Nowacki was home free for a touchdown, and he's running down the field, and Brandon Browner ran him down and stripped the ball away from him. Like, just the most phenomenal athletic play, defensive play, one of the few that I've seen. So yeah, those were the athletes for me in the CFL. But great league. I don't know if there's any superstars in there, and the players took offense. The PA took offense, but you know what? They're going to move on from that. They're going to move on. Shall we move on?
Yeah. Well, no, one last thing. Rob Evans, Stu Laird. Yeah. I think you're a Calgary guy. He was blood and guts of the city. Todd Kozak, not a CFL fan. I don't think. I don't remember either Ron Jeremy or Gary Coleman playing in the CFL, but thanks for joining in.
Yeah, Bill Cosby didn't either. So you know, we said we leaned into politics last few weeks. We leaned away from it in the first segment. Let's go back in, because you know we do a show every Tuesday, and lots happens. As of last Tuesday, we're on the air. We are wondering if there was going to be an election called. We needed this election called a long time ago, and the Liberal Party took their time. You know, it might not have been the most terrible strategy on their part, because right now, as far as what they want to accomplish, it seems to be working if you pay attention to the polls. But we finally got an election called. We're heading to the polls. What's the date? April 21st?
28th.
April 28th. We call an election. Mark Carney, the prime minister, what is it? The de facto? What's the word?
Yeah, something we talked about last. De facto.
The non-elected prime minister.
Non-elected, but still flying to Europe on Canada's tax dollars.
Yeah. He called an election, and by the looks of this CBC News polls, there it's kind of head to head right there, with 37.5 to 37.1 between Liberal and Conservative. I mean, let's be real; it's a two-horse race. The NDP, Jagmeet Singh, he destroyed any credibility his party had in the last 5 years because of his duplicitous nature of humming and hawing. But Sheldon, I know you follow this closely. What angle do you want to take talking about this?
Well, first off, I'm going to okay. Reagan Kohlberg in the comments has been talking about the PPC all night long, and I'll tell you what, the PPC was a movement and it started out of wanting to check some of the insanity coming out of all the major parties. But where I want to take this one tonight, though, Chev, is 2 months ago, Conservatives had 43% of the vote. Now they're down to in second place, if you believe the polls. And my whole question on that is, what is it about this election that's making Carney so popular? I feel as a Western Canadian, I feel like, okay, like the guy's just another Trudeau liberal, yet somehow in this country, it has swung so far back. The narrative becomes, okay, the big issue in this country is dealing with Donald Trump. Why is that the narrative? Because there's way more problems in Canada than just Donald Trump. That's the whole reason we got in this position in the first place. And second of all, what is it about this Carney guy that makes everybody in Central Canada love him so much? And nobody's answering those questions for me.
Yeah, I don't know what makes everyone love him. I could see what's going on here. I mean, I don't think it was by design that the Liberals are looking smart here. Like what I said, with them looking smart and working in their favor, I think it was just dumb luck. Dumb luck that Donald Trump decided to steer his guns north, right? And because he takes up so much space on our media scene, it wind up helping the liberals. It absolutely wind up helping, because there's a lot of people that will associate the conservatives with Donald Trump, and because that has sort of been the narrative. There's breadcrumbs. I mean, listen, there's breadcrumbs of our conservative leaders and conservative politicians warming up to those Republican type politicians in the South. Whether you agree there's a negative reason for that or not, people who are more left, whether it's I believe the NDP voters, the liberals, and many of the undecideds, see that as an alignment, or saw it as an alignment. And because there was so much I guess attention focused on Trump because he turned his guns north, it's almost a reaction that, well, if we go conservative, they're going to align with Trump and they're going to bring us to the U.S. And I know that's not right, and it's illogical, because listen,
it's illogical. Yeah,
it's illogical, but people make illogical connections to understand anything. It's like that with anything these days. There is no logic to people's rationales about anything.
So that's going to lead me to the next point. First of all, I'm going to say one thing on that. I'm going to say that the Americans swung back to Trump because they experienced 4 years of bad governorship when they don't even know who was in charge or who was making the decisions. Canada's coming off of 10 years of it, and we're the worst position we've been in decades.
I agree with you. Listen, I have no shame in admitting I'm voting conservative. I don't even need to watch. But something is happening that's causing people for what the lead the conservatives had 2 months ago has diminished.
So let me ask you this. So now we're having a political conversation. By the way, when we played with the Stamps together, I don't remember ever talking politics with anybody. But now it's all you see anywhere.
Maybe it's because we don't play football anymore.
Yeah, maybe. And speaking of all you see anywhere, though, what do you make of the way that people have over the last, say, 20 years really brought in their politics to be part of their identity and part of their life? Like, if you go on social media right now, it's horrible, right? There's no, I remember when internet forums first came out and people would debate things, but now there's no debate. You pick a team, you paint your face, you throw on your jersey, and you're just at war with you. It's like a bunch of soccer hooligans.
Oh yeah. There's no debate. There's no discourse. There's nothing. It's just, and you pick a side. And for me, I can't do that because, again, let's say, when people talk about Trump, oh, he's this, or he's that. Like, I don't like him as a person. I think he's disrespectful. There's so much I don't like about him. But when you talk about things like policies, like, do I agree with a system where the best people should be hired for the job? Yes, I agree with that. And if it comes at the cost of programs that try to help people that might not have been looked at, if they're not the best people for the job, then I'm sorry, I agree with policies that put the best people in place. Do I agree with policies that sort of, diminish and I guess remove the rights of people because they identify a certain way just because? Then that goes against a merit-based system. I don't agree, but I'm making a point here. So even on the left side, there's things I agree with. Do I agree with certain policies that help people out, that grant them rights, versus policies that just cost money without providing any real benefit? So I'm always in the middle. So I'm not going to call anyone a piece of crap for voting for a guy, because I don't think that everyone that votes conservative is a MAGA racist. I don't believe that.
Are you calling MAGAs racists?
No. I'm saying I don't believe that, like what we said in the poem, just because you vote for Trump, it doesn't automatically mean you're a white supremacist hater of.
It technically, it means the farthest from that. It means you really want to reinvest in your country and get back to the rule of law. Just like on the right, snowflakes, libtards,
or on the left. Yeah, I don't call people
the right saying that to the left.
Oh yeah.
Most of the people on the left aren't there. It's crazy to me that most of us are in, or a lot of us, I hope, are somewhat educated on who these people are and what their policies are. There should be zero fear of either party becoming an extremist in our country. But all you see on social, you don't see any debate. You don't see anybody say, oh, you know, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. Well, maybe Carney's connections could be good for this, or somebody take it seriously when now he's a globalist. He's connected with these guys. You can't listen to what he says now. People can make good arguments on either side, but instead, all we have is like arguments. It's
but
crazy.
I think
I have people that I knew back in the day. Last thing I'll say,
Oh,
I have people I were friends with back in the day that are still on my Facebook feed, that they don't even know that they hate me.
Yeah.
Because they lump somebody's politics in with the worst attributes that you could dream up to scare people off of voting for that guy. I just think it's gone so far. And you know what I think it is, Chev? I think what happened that got us so polarized was the advent of social media and the advent of algorithms.
Oh yeah.
Where suddenly you could just feel so fulfilled that everybody in your circle agrees with you and everybody on the other side is a bad guy. It's not the middle voices that are being promoted and projected on there. It's just the extremists. The guys you hate are hated by all of your followers, and everybody just loves the stuff that you say, but you don't realize that people not commenting are just offended.
But I think, yeah, I agree. But I also think it's something deeply psychological. I think that it's like, you know, Sheldon, your shoulders look fantastic, by the way. You've been working out lately, and you're looking good. I noticed that things are good, right? And people aren't going to go on your social media most of the time and comment on the good things. Yeah, they'll see a picture of you and your family. But you know what people have figured out? That when they write something that's polarizing, that's opinionated, that might be negative, people reply and people get triggered. And I think in some warped sense, it's people's psychological need to be heard. So they post something super offensive, super nasty, and it gets a reaction. Because this is my rule. My rule is this: Sheldon, you could post whatever you want on social media. If it's something that I don't like and I just ignore it, I'm not going to go on your post and comment and have a fight with you on your page. Just like if you have a conservative sign on your lawn, I'm not going to go crap on your lawn. I'm just going to keep walking. But people use their social media spaces, Facebook, Twitter, X, to post things that generate a reaction. And I think it's because a lot of people are frustrated with what's going on in the world. And they don't have, we're a very less social world. We don't answer doors.
That's, you know what, let me finish. You know what I think of it? Yeah, I finished, but I think they're lonely.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm getting. We don't answer doors. We don't answer phones. We don't go out shopping. You know, our department stores closed down. We don't go to restaurants anymore. We order our food. The restaurant's closing down. We don't do anything in person. We're lonelier than we've ever been, and we don't know how to say nice things. So the next thing is say negative things because those generate a reaction. And it is exactly what you said. It's people's loneliness, their own isolation, and it's the only way they have any human interaction. Because people's social media opinions don't influence me. I could care less. And if I had a real problem with you, and this happened with me today, I mentioned it to this, and I texted this person one-to-one just to say, hey, because I love you, I'm going to say this. But if it's any Joe Blow that I don't really care about, one of those people, like you said, that it's, you know, I've known them from high school, and every day I see things that shows them how far apart we are. They might still be my friend. I'm not going to unfriend them, but I definitely don't invest anything into them. And we're at that point in society where people just want to fight. Now, I know Trey is a young guy. Trey's 21 years old. This is probably going into maybe his second election. Trey, we're going to do a little 2 minutes with Trey because I know you did a paper about this in university. You're in communications. You probably have a little bit different take than us. Trey, jump on and give us your take from a young guy going. Is this your second election? This is probably the second time you get to vote, right?
Federally, my first one. I voted in the Alberta one. That was a few years ago. That was my first one. This is my first.
Well, congratulations! Congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah. So you mentioned when we were prepping for the show, you said you had written something about this. What's your take on all this? Because you live in a different social media world than Sheldon and I. Like we're talking about Facebook. Who knows what's going on the channels you're on?
Yeah, I wrote a paper on the American election this fall. So we had to write a paper in my communications class. And I just thought that like apps like Twitter and Instagram and all the comments and it's just a cesspool. And so I just wrote that like families and friends are going to be divided throughout the whole election. And they were. And you saw people fight and bitch and moan and complain. And now it's kind of the same thing for us now that we have our election just a few months later. Like, people are fighting and complaining and bitching and moaning, and it's so split, and you just can't be in the middle. You have to be either so extremist one side or the other, and that sucks because like you're just labeled all the time.
Yep.
You know, Trey, though, I do challenge you on that. We believe that's the truth. I challenge you to question that truth, because I think for the most people, like here in this room, yeah, we like it when people agree with us. It's, you know, and we really get frustrated when somebody disagrees with us. In the States, it did get to the point where there's articles written about, am I okay not to invite my family if they're Trump supporters, and people justifying things like that. But I think in reality, people can kind of get together. I think it's the fringes that are driving this narrative, getting us all uptight. I don't know. It's just, I don't think it has to be this way.
No, it certainly doesn't. But I don't think that like I'm not saying you can't question and be a fan of both sides, but I'm saying like the majority of people are going to push you one way or the other, and there's nothing you could say or do to change their mind.
Yeah.
So you just get into pointless arguments to just waste your time.
So on social media, you can't come up with a super clever post that'll make everybody on the other side say,
"No,
he's
impossible.
Got a point. Maybe he's right.
Impossible.
I'm joining Team Trey. Trey for Prime Minister."
Yeah, you're right about that. There is no space for that. There's no space for that middle ground to voice your opinions, because the minute I think I'm a perfect example for that. You know, I see both sides. There's things that I like on both sides. There's things that I would, you know, policy and issues that I would pick from both. But right now, I'm not voting because I like one guy or one party more than the other. I'm voting for change. I'm voting for for me right now, the Liberal Party represents a whole bunch of recycled politicians that were left over after their original draft picks all failed, fired, scandaled their way out of politics. And now you got the B team trying to fight for supremacy within a party that's floundering behind a leader that wasn't even part of the party. That's not even, I mean, he hasn't even lived in Canada. The other day he made a speech. Mark Carney, we're talking about, made a speech referencing one of his MPs to be as a survivor of the Concordia shooting, which is like a slap in the face to all the women that died at the Polytechnic shooting. You know, and then he doesn't even know where certain towns are.
And he didn't know her name. He misspoke her name.
Yeah, he misspoke her name.
Didn't even know who she was.
And then refuses the French language debate, which is a huge slap in the face to, I mean, listen, there are millions of Quebecers there. I got to assume that one of the greatest things for Western Canada is the fact that Mark Carney didn't want to do a French debate, and the French people, now I'm not saying they're going to vote conservative. I think they've got some strong candidates. They're probably going to go back to the Bloc, but the Liberal leader of Canada that represents, you know, the two official languages, which is a huge French Canadian population. It's not like a little tiny island. Like this is
millions,
millions of people and lots of seats. I can't tell you how many. Trey, you could get me later, but he's choosing to shun them. You know, and the leader of the Bloc Québécois says this man must not have been born with much courage. Like there's a great video, I sent it out before. He talked about. He says his party says they don't have the $75,000 to pay for the French language debate, and I think both the leader of the Bloc and Pierre Poilievre were going to pay the money. And then he says, you know, one of the French reporters said, "Well, do you think it's because he doesn't have good French?" He's like, "Well, if he feels his French is not good enough and is scared to speak French, how's this guy going to deal with Donald Trump? Maybe he should take some night courses. You know, if he's scared to be uncomfortable, he's going to be super uncomfortable if he has to go deal with Trump."
It also shows that he wasn't prepared. I think we're just going to take this to the hour, guys. What do you think? But anyway, so
quick break.
He started introducing and flirting with the idea of running for national office about 7 years ago. No, actually, it was further back than that. I think it was around 2012, 2013. He started making inquiries. He's had 12, 13 years to learn the language, but he's not that vested in it. He's not truly trying to represent all Canadians. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had countless interviews calling himself a European and living anywhere but Canada and moving his Canadian companies to the States. He's a guy that's running as a front runner. In my opinion, I don't know him. I don't trust him. And I just look at his body of work. I'm sure people can say the same thing about Pierre Poilievre, though. So with that, Trey, yes, I will let you take us to break.
Okay.
Yeah. So listen, guys, we're going to take a quick break. Rubio wants us to explain the concept of Western Canada. Maybe we'll come into the next talk about that. But guys, thanks for all the comments. Keep them rolling. We're Chevy and Nasty. You follow us on all your socials. Our show is going to be available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and YYC Business for download shortly after we're off the air. We'll be back in a bit to wrap this up.
Performance Freight Management is a global logistic freight shipping company that will handle the entire shipping process for any package to any country. Whether it be a simple truck shipment from your office to Toronto or your company importing generators from China, PFM Freight handles it all. We have the expertise and technology to handle any shipping requirements. Skip the guesswork and let us take the shipping pain off your plate.
Do you want your business to be known? YYCCalgaryBusiness.ca is Calgary's only online media platform that gets you noticed. Short-form video content is rapidly taking over as the most effective way to engage your audience. Whether you're being interviewed on a vodcast, sharing a sizzle reel, or even hosting your own show, there is one place you can publicize your business. We want to tell your story and introduce you to our network of empowered business owners and leaders right here in Calgary. Isn't it time you took your digital game to 11? Call us or email us now.
And we weren't going to talk politics.
No, but we said we said we leaned into sports to start. I think it's always good to start with something fun, especially when we're going to talk about something heavy. We went long. We knew we were going to go long, but we're not on time. Our poem, we didn't know what the direction is. Well, we knew the direction, but not the timing. Welcome back, guys. It's Chevy, Nasty, joined by Trey. We had 2 minutes with Trey. We're brought to you by Performance Freight Management, We Drone Real Estate Media. We went a little bit long, but you know what? It's topical. It's fun. It's interesting. You guys are here with us. Nanamana, Rob Evans, he's saying ciao. Rubio's here. Sheldon, explain the concept of Western Canadians for Rubio, because I don't think he understands.
I can do that easily. Rubio, if you've ever watched Hunger Games, you have the central power that controls everything. Then you have the 10, 12, or 11 districts that just feeds their resources, their money to the center, but the center has all the power and control. In Canada was founded with a agreement between the French and the English to stop fighting. And then they decided they needed more influence. So they went out there and settled the territories before the Americans can get to it. And that's how Canada was founded. They gave us a railroad. We signed away our rights. The railroad was a big thing. And there's a lot of proud Canadian stories that came out of the West. But Western Canadians are built on industry, resource, work, and very practical living, because we grew up in a time in Western Canada, much like Idaho is not always the most easy place to live. People here grew up hard and they had to be realistic, and they know where food comes from and they know the value of a dollar. So we're very practical in the West. Central's all corporate. They tend to forget about where their money and resources that they're trading at commodities on the TSX and the Dow Jones, they forget where that's coming from. The West just wants more say because we're the ones driving the economy.
Yeah, and I would agree. Growing up an Easterner, you understand that the central power in Canada is in Ottawa, which is, where everything goes. And I guess because some of the greatest resources come from the West, and for lack of a better term, said to be to spread the wealth, but really it's not an equitable spread, because you're taking from the rich West and then you're just distributing it to the people in the East. And there's
which the West is fine with. As a Westerner, you're fine with that. We get that. That's called commerce. You're okay with that. But now you come back with this top-heavy policies that tells you what you can and you can't do. We're going to tax you for this. We're going to cap emissions on this. Well, I know you need that pipeline to get it across Canada, but we're not going to actually back you up.
Yeah.
Right now, in fact, interesting fact, Rubio, Canadians are up in arms right now because Trump's tariffs are estimated to cost between $8 and $12 billion this year and tens of thousands of jobs. That is serious. So Canada's boycotting the states and burning Teslas. However, in 2019, 2020, we canceled the pipeline. It didn't cost us $8 to $10 billion a year. It cost us $15 to $18 billion a year. Canada cut off the West from our independence and our money and our commerce and our economy. And so for me as a Canadian, like you can say this brings us together. I just look at it as hypocrisy. Yeah, I want Trump's tariffs to go, and I want Canada to start actually working for Canada, or I don't know what Canada is anymore.
And that's the big thing, is a lot of people in the East don't understand that unless they live here. Right. So people that, when you talk about liberal and how can they be making up so much share, when we talked about that, they don't understand that relationship, because they get all the benefits. They get all the benefits of everything without really feeling the pain. The money flows one way. It doesn't flow out of Ontario and Quebec into Alberta to build our programs, but it flows from Alberta into Ottawa and then redistributed where there's more population. So they don't see what we feel. And therefore, when you don't see a problem, you don't think it exists. And that's why when there's that rhetoric online and people say, oh, you vote conservative, you're this, you're that. Well, no, I vote conservative because I understand what Mark Carney's influence on the Liberal Party did for the last 9 years with those carbon taxes, with those policies that would shut down one of the most resource-rich areas of the country, and only cause problems out here. So I saw it. I'm voting specifically for that.
And we lost tens of thousands of jobs, 60,000 construction jobs alone. Through the development of the pipeline.
Again, listen, I know where I come from, and I came from an area where people, if they can take advantage of a social program, they're going to take advantage of a social program. Whereas, I've been out West, and people don't like to take advantage of things like unemployment. They're not like, oh, well, I guess I'll go on unemployment. I have friends out of a job that refuse to go to the unemployment office.
You just bring them a meal. You bring them a meal, right?
Yeah.
You offer them a job or see how you can help.
Yeah, definitely a different mentality. But let's get off the politics now. Let's roll into something that we always do in the third segment, because we do want to wrap this up. We're already at an hour, but we have some fun stuff to talk about. Sheldon, let's hit the studs and duds to start.
All right.
Studs and duds.
All right.
We'll start with my stud, but my stud, unfortunately, Chev, is political. Today, after Carney, we talked about this. After Carney declines the debate, first off saying, well, it's not fair because the Green Party's not there. The next day coming back and saying, well, it's because of $75,000 and we weren't prepared to pay $75,000 for this debate. Pierre Poilievre, in his witty way, comes out and offers the man $75,000 from the conservative war chest to get him to the debate. He offered to invite the Green Party to debate just so everything could be fair. But the truth is, we know that he's afraid to go in front of a French audience and put his foot in his mouth. Plus, he told Western Canada he will put emergency war acts to get the pipeline built. And then the next day he went to Quebec and says, no way will I ever allow a pipeline to go through Quebec. So good on Pierre, just calling out the hypocrisy.
Yeah, no, definite hypocrisy. I'm with you there. My stud is going to be sports related. We're going sports and politics today, it seems. NCAA, this is in honor of Cozy, who may or may not be listening, and Daryl. The biggest upset in the history of the NCAA, Wyatt Hendrickson's heavyweight defeat of Gable Stevenson of the Minnesota Golden Gophers. It was a heavyweight tilt. Wyatt was not expected to win, a heavy underdog, transferred, I believe it was from Navy to Oklahoma. Gable Stevenson was going for his third title. He had left
70 matches in a row too.
Yeah. So huge winning record. I mean, this was a guy, he's in the WWE, he had a tryout in the NFL, decides to go back to the NCAA, and Wyatt Hendrickson comes up with the victory. That's my stud of the week. I love the underdog story. So when you have something like this, I'm sure they'll make a movie of it or something.
We have video of this too if you guys want to watch it. It's pretty cool.
Let's hit it.
30 seconds left. Oh, he's to the left this time. He's sliding off. Oh, look at him get big here. On the high cross. He's right on top. Oh my gosh. Can you believe this? Henderson with the three. Gable Bell hustle. The Olympic champ is about to lose. It's 13 seconds. This could be it. Oh my goodness. The biggest upset in the history of the NCAA. Could this be it? Yes.
Down 2 with 20 seconds left. That's great. You know what's funny though is was it Williamson or who was the guy that lost?
Stevenson.
Yeah, he's got to be thinking at that point. Just hold on, just create distance. Yeah. I mean, as epic as it was, on the losing side, how bad did that feel?
Oh, sick. He's got to be sick to his stomach, especially since when he left the sport, he was like chirping it, like, "Oh, I'm above wrestling. I've done everything I need to do here."
Good on him.
I'm gonna go to WWE. I'm gonna go play in the NFL, and then just gets humbled. I feel bad for him, but it's such a good story. Oh,
how did he do in the WWE? You're pretty much got your finger on the pulse of that. What did he do in the WWE? Because I mean, he's making money if he's there. Why would he go back to NCAA?
He was there for like a quick cup of coffee in the NXT, like the developmental, and just wasn't really working. He just didn't really grow up wrestling, the amateur side, so it wasn't the same. And then Triple H and him kind of got into it, so they gave him the snip, and he went to Buffalo, and not really panned out to be a football player there. So he went back thinking he could finish off his 70, I guess would have been 71 matches in a row and the third NCAA title. And
how does he compare to Brock Lesnar's record? Because Brock Lesnar was a Golden Gopher, right? And similar path. Like I don't know if anyone knows Brock's deal when he was in college, but I mean, he was the big thing, right? He went out WWE, NFL. He had a tryout, I believe, at the Patriots, and didn't really pan out. And we all know his story, UFC and all that. But yeah, no, that's my stud. Are we doing duds? Let's hit the duds.
My dad is just my busy schedule, not being able to follow up with the March Madness trade. Tell me how. I said I was going to do. I get dumber by the moment that I watch Canadian news. Guys, you turn on the news and you watch all the channels telling you the exact same thing and the exact same opinion about everything. I'm so tired of talking about it, though. I just turn it off. Trey, tell me about the NCAA. How are my Iowa State Cyclones doing? Did we advance to the third round?
I have really bad news for you.
Oh,
there's your dud, Sheldon.
Yeah,
I think that's your dud right there.
That's my dud.
Well,
yeah, so I just want to. This would be my dud for the week if we will allow it. Take a look at this. This was one of the worst March Madness weekends ever. For the first time since 2007, there was no 11 seed or worse in the Sweet 16. Like all the favorites won. Even the 10 seed Arkansas, they beat it. Yeah, like they have John Calipari, who's like one of the greatest coaches ever. So they barely count as a 10 seed. Just no big upsets. All the games were pretty blowout, boring. So March Madness sucked this year.
So there's a good chance that if someone had a bracket and they picked all the favorites, they could have won.
You know what? There's still going to be another year without the perfect brackets. Someone went almost 2 full rounds and he choked on the last game. Would have been like the most ever, but yeah, he had an upset in the last game. Of course, it didn't hit. So
All right.
Well, my dud to finish this off is I guess when you have your Secretary of Defense and head of head of military planning, I guess they're texting. What's the app they use? So the U.S. What is it? JD Vance
I
and
think it's WhatsApp.
No, it's
Pete
there's a
Heskin-
different
no, it
name
wasn't.
for it.
It was a different. It wasn't
It's like
WhatsApp. It
Sync
was
or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Chatter. I don't know. Anyhow, they're talking about their plans to attack. But they forgot that they invited the reporter or the editor in chief of the Atlantic, and they're just tweeting out and texting out war plans over a social media platform. Like, this is one step away from like sending a dick pic out to the world, right? From the White House. This is not good. I mean, when you talk about all these things about, state secrets and, all the he said, she said back and forth between the left and the right and the Republicans and the Democrats. And then you got this stuff out there, a signal.
No, it's called Signal. That's the app. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That's the
I
app.
will tell you this: when Trump said he'd be the most transparent government in the history of the United States of America, dude, this is transparent. Not only that, look at them; they're disagreeing on things. Everything that they're saying here is on brand. It's almost like you get the feeling if you see a Canadian government talk, you're like, well, what should we tell the people? We'll tell them this, but we're going to do that. Dude, this is right in your face. Was it a whoops? Yeah, that's a big whoops. I was expecting Trump to come out and say, you're fired. But they're trying to figure out what went wrong there. They're trying to figure out where the slip up came from.
I'm sure in a couple of weeks, I think there was some congressional stuff going on that I saw today that they were questioning some guys. Pretty awkward position to be in, though, when you're supposed to guard these things. But anyhow, last thing, we talked a lot about politics. We talked a lot about sports. Something we wanted to start here tonight. We're going to get going before the 20 minutes are up. Sheldon, people get so divided on things, especially up here right now, a lot of uncertainty. But when we talk about our country, and I know you've been feeling a little bit lack of that nationalistic pride, which, I still have it. I love Canada. I love my country. I don't just love Western Canada. I don't just love Eastern Canada. I love the coast to coast. I've been all over Canada. We have great people. It is the differences and the diversity in our country that make us great, from the Newfies to the British Columbians. But
love the East Coasters.
Each week, for the next little while, I just want to talk about great things that are Canadian. Just talk about some great. And this week, I want to talk about great Canadian comics. So, things that make Canada great. Sheldon, talking about some of the great Canadian comics. Who is your favorite Canadian comic? Like, guys that you grew up watching or you like now, like, who would be your great Canadian comic?
So, first thing, and I'm going to get off this fast, but every face that I see up there as a Canadian comic is all living in LA.
Yeah, but that's what they do. That's what they do.
And that's like, we fight the US, but every chance we get to move down there, we move down there and we stay there.
They still go back to mom's house.
Because of that, like, for me, like, Mike Myers, obviously, it's been awesome. Jim Carrey, I've got on my list. John Candy from when I was a kid. But you know what I also like? I like Rick Mercer and some of the guys that just kind of made their living up in Canada, right?
That's a OG. I forgot about him.
Yeah. Well, OG if you're 12 or whatever you are now. But yeah, you know what? That's the one thing I think Canadians, we've always been able, again, the hard climate, the hard culture, the way we grow up, we've always been able to keep a sense of humor, or at least we used to. And up here is a bunch of legends. But when I was a kid, it was John Candy. Leslie Nielsen, remember him? Airplane and all those
Airplane.
movies?
Well, listen, Saturday Night Live, still one of the funniest sketch comedy shows, created by Lorne Michaels. He's Canadian. He's Canadian, right? And some great Canadians on that show. You talk about Dan Aykroyd, right? The Blues Brothers, Ghostbusters. Dan Aykroyd was one of my favorites. They say he was kind of a bit of a recluse, but I think he's okay. No, Chevy Chase was the big jerk, but he's not Canadian. But okay. Michael J. Fox, is he a comedian to you? I mean, Family Ties was a great show. Family Ties
great
was
actor.
A great show. Hey, listen.
Who's bossy?
Back to the Future. Back to the Future, one of the greatest, most recognizable movie trilogies.
Yeah.
You almost can't redo that. So Michael J. Fox, I love. Did you know that? How about this? Tommy Chong. Cheech and Chong was Canadian?
From Edmonton.
I think I did. I might have known that, but I've completely forgotten it for like 2 decades. So yeah.
But even
totally.
like another like a more famous Will Arnett, he's Canadian.
Yeah.
Again, Rick Moranis. I'm looking through this. We got some funny people in Canada.
How about Russell Peters though? Somebody a little bit more contemporary.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen much of him, and
He's
I
good.
think he's still like somewhat living in Canada now.
He's
probably
he
down
does
in
a
LA
he
too.
does
But
a
Russell
bunch of
Peters, to
Canadian.
me, the first time I saw him get up on stage, I laughed my ass off because it was the first time they introduced like Indian culture when he was able to like totally break down.
Yeah.
We had Indian neighbors and all these things, but you didn't really understand the intricacies of their family. He made me feel like I understood the Punjabi or the Indian culture better than I had any right to feel that I could relate to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think that's
Yeah.
what comedy does. Comedy done right will laugh at all sides and laugh at yourself and pick on the targets you shouldn't pick on. But as long as
for
you're
sure.
equal in how it's applied, it really can be a uniting factor.
Yeah. So if you had a Mount Rushmore of Canadian comedians, who's yours, Sheldon?
Yeah. Mount Rushmore is a bunch of old guys that might not even apply anymore. But you're going to throw John Candy up there, Mike Myers for sure.
Yeah.
I think you got to throw Leslie Nielsen, even though he's kind of before us. You know what I mean? But Naked Gun 2.5.
Yeah. 33 and a third.
Did I say Jim Carrey already? Jim Carrey is going to be up there. And then you probably got to go Norm Macdonald.
Yeah, I think that's exactly who I'd go.
Norm. Who else would you guys go with? Who else?
So for sure, Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey, probably the most recognizable. Different style than Norm. Norm is a deadpan guy, right? Just the funniest guy. He had one of the greatest interviews. I remember watching it a few years ago. I can't remember, but he just has you laughing. John Candy. I mean, what you can't even say anything more. Yeah, Mike Myers, I like that. Martin Short.
Jamie brings up Martin Short, but Todd Kozak brings up Tom Green and Ricky from Trailer Park Boys. I don't even know his name.
Oh,
Ricky from Trailer Park Boys. Dude, he's one of the most naturally funny Canadians. And maybe someday we'll be talking about the guys from Shores.
And Letterkenny, all the Letterkenny boys.
Letterkenny.
Yeah, so there's some new up and comers, but I think it takes a lot to get on that top 10 list and the guys we talked about. But let's see, Rubio, an American who loves Canadians and loves Canada, loves poutine, says John Candy, Norm Macdonald, and Jim Carrey. The list is done. Yeah, if I would say the top 3 guys, I'd say that's it right there. So we have some
Mike Myers. Rubio, you missed
Myers.
Mike Myers on your show earlier tonight too about great sequels. Austin Powers was like some of the greatest sequels of all time.
Yeah,
Myers has got to be up there.
Yeah, I would say those guys right there, the guys you named. And if there was a Mount Rushmore of podcasters that go over time and that never finish when they say they will, it'd probably be Chevy and Nasty, and then their producer Trey gets a spot right beside them because you're part of the action, Trey. Guys, I think we're going to end it with that tonight. Great talk. It's always topical. When it goes over time, it's because it was fun and it was exciting. And it was not just because Sheldon and I are good talkers, but it's because you guys give us a lot to work with your comments. Trey, great job tonight. Sheldon, awesome to bring it. For all of you out there, guys, again, follow us on all our socials. Podcasts will be available for download on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and we're always featured on Fridays on YYC Business Platform. Thanks, Performance Freight Management, We Drone Real Estate Media, and YYC Business. Thanks to you guys for tuning in live and all the comments. We love you, and we'll see you next week on episode 69.